We're sitting across the table from each other, and he just looked at me and he's like, "You are never gonna amount to anything." Yeah, and that hit me so hard. I think I was devastated that he thought that way about me, but truthfully, deep down, I felt that way about myself. And so I got up from the table and I walked out of that restaurant and I decided I was going to change my life. I was going to have a better life.
Without Fear of Her Future podcast is for women who are passionately pursuing financial freedom, using multiple streams of income and real estate to accomplish their goals. We are here to empower you to be brave, dream big, and design a life you love. I'm your co-host, Tresa Todd, founder of the Women's Real Estate Investors Network and author of the book Without Fear of Her Future.
And I'm Melissa Baker, a real estate investor and fitness coach specializing in turning properties from drab to fab. I'm here to help motivate and inspire you to build your dream life because, girl, you deserve it. Today, we have a fantastic guest with us who prides herself on keeping it refreshingly real in all facets of life. She is the co-author of the empowering book Relationship Grit, an exploration of building strong and enduring partnerships written alongside her husband. She is a savvy real estate investor based on the Florida coast, a motivational speaker, and a host of the Kathryn for Real podcast. Kathryn, we are so excited to have you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
I am so excited to be here chatting with you ladies.
Oh, thank you so much. Kathryn, you truly have an inspiring story and are definitely no stranger to reinventing yourself. So I want to start out. You've coined from your present day success as your second act. So can you start us off by just telling us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today?
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah. So, I grew up in a very dysfunctional family, alcoholic parents. My dad was military. We moved around all the time. As a matter of fact, I went to 5 different elementary schools before
Wow.
landing, before landing in Virginia Beach, Virginia in the 5th grade. And so unfortunately, I learned how to cope at a very young age, and that was by drinking and smoking pot. And so I lived that kind of crazy life. I had no supervision. I ended up moving in with my drug dealing boyfriend at 16 years old
Wow.
because of a violent fight in my home that turned towards me. But while I was living with this guy, I ended up graduating from high school
Wow.
and decided I needed to better my life. And I was going to go to college. And when I would say to people that I was going to college, they would laugh because let me tell you, I was not a very good student. But I did end up getting into community college, and I went there 2 years and I raised my grades, and then I transferred over to a 4-year university. In the process of that, I finally left that drug dealing violent boyfriend. And
Good.
I actually started dating this guy who was an attorney. And I thought by dating him that it was going to make me better. That somehow by dating this, prestigious attorney, it was going to make me better. But you know what? One day we were sitting at lunch, we're sitting across the table from each other, and he just looked at me and he's like, "You are never going to amount to anything."
Wow.
Yeah, and that
Wow.
hit me so hard. I think I was devastated that he thought that way about me,
Yeah.
but truthfully, deep down, I felt that way about myself.
Mm.
And so I got up from the table and I walked out of that restaurant and I decided I was going to change my life. I was going to
Wow.
have a better life. Yeah.
Wow.
And it did take a couple years. I will say that, I was still the party queen but I did end up getting it together. And by the age of 25, I like to say I traded tequila shots for green juice shots. Yeah, I got really into yoga and, fitness and meditation and then I ended up meeting my husband, John Gordon, and our book, Relationship Grit, is not a book about, oh, look at us, we have this great relationship, and it's none of that. This is us We went through hell. And John will be the first to tell you he was not a very good husband to me at all. He was awful. And I was going to leave him. And I had gotten really, really sick, and it's a whole other story. You can always just Google my name and breast implants. But I ended up, my breast implants were filled with a black mold that almost killed
Oh,
me. And he was awful to me. I mean, my neighbor ended up having to take me to the hospital to have surgery. So, that was kind of our life early on. And then I finally just got to the point where I said, I'm done. I am done with you. I don't want to live with somebody who makes me feel this way.
mm,
And, he he told me I made him feel miserable, but really what he says now and what is the truth is that he was miserable and he was looking for someone to blame it on, right?
yeah.
And so
Right.
that's what we talk about in the book. So anyway, he begged me to stay and promised that he was going to be a better man. And he did. He worked on it. And, my husband was Jewish. And through his working on trying to heal himself and make himself a better man, better husband, better father, he actually, through a Buddhist energy healer, found Jesus.
Oh my
Wow.
gosh, how
Is that the
crazy.
craziest thing? They
Yes.
would have these intellectual talks and, talk about energy, all this stuff. But this Buddhist was like, no, you don't understand. Jesus, he's amazing. And, really Christianity is really kind of like spiritual cheating. He's like, as a Buddhist, I have to suffer and I have to do all this. He goes, with Jesus, you just give it all to him. So
Woo,
it
yeah.
really kind of opened John's eyes and he was like, whoa, what is this? And he started to discover that. Now,
Wow.
I'm going into, I know your question was about how I went into my second act, but
Well, before you go
definitely-
there, I just want to stop you because you
Yeah.
said so much amazing stuff.
So much.
I want to go back to the boyfriend who sat
Okay.
across the table from you and said
Okay.
you're never going to amount to anything. And I think don't you just want to say, look at me now?
Okay, this is a funny story. So guess what? When I was in my second act, which we're going to talk about, and I wrote my book and it became a bestseller, who did I FedEx a copy to?
You go, girl. I love it.
That's awesome.
I love it. I have a feeling that those words are kind of what propelled you. So as much as they hurt, that was something that propelled you, that made you think, I am going to prove this son of a gun wrong, when you certainly have. I didn't even mention
awesome.
at the beginning of this that you and I had an opportunity. We're in one of the same masterminds. And I just got to sit next to you for several hours and visit, and you were so amazing. I've heard you and your husband speak, and oh my gosh, absolutely incredible. So I know, what. I just see the second act, girl, so to even hear all of this story from before is just mind blowing to know that was even your past. So, but what I love about this story is it gives our listeners hope. Anything is possible.
Yes.
Whatever our history is, whatever our background is, whatever boyfriend we might be living with, God's got a good plan for us.
He
If we
does.
will just lean into him. All right. I don't want to just take over. I want you to go back. The Buddhist, your husband found Jesus through the Buddhist.
Yes, but I do want to go back to that and tell you, you're exactly right. It doesn't matter where we come from. And you're big on that as well,
Yeah.
Tresa. I always do that, don't I?
That's right.
In that, I didn't know a different way. I didn't know a different life, but I knew I didn't want to be living the life I was living.
Yeah.
And his words did propel me. I just said, you know what? I've got to do different. I've somehow got to do different. And so I did, like I said, ended up with John. And so he became a Christian. And I was not raised with religion. My father was Catholic and he had been forced to go to Catholic school and the altar boy. And so we were not really raised with any religion. And of course there was the alcoholism and all of that. And so although I would say I was a Christian, I really didn't know anything about Christianity.
Yeah.
And it was actually through John that he would start to teach me, you know, the teachings of the Bible and the teachings of Jesus. So that's kind of a neat thing. And so in our book, that's what I was sharing as well, is that we kind of go through our story and what it was like in the beginning, and then how we were able to turn it around. And it's through the GRIT acronym, which is, I'll give you the abbreviated version, was bringing God into our relationship. And during that time, I'm going to tell you, it was hard. And when we got together, we had another bump in the road. I'm just going to share it because we're all ladies. So
There you go.
once John became a Christian, and this is 14 years later, I was out to lunch with some girlfriends, and they had, one of the girls was talking about how she was cheating on her husband. Another one was getting a divorce. And I was just hearing all this disconnect. So John gets home from work that day. We go for a walk on the beach, and I'm feeling insecure. Like I'm feeling like he had been traveling all the time and I just needed to connect. So I'm like, John, you know, this so-and-so is getting a divorce, and, you know, and he stops dead in his tracks, turns and looks at me and says, I have something to tell you.
Oh, no.
My heart dropped. He said, back when we first got married, I cheated on you. Now, in his stupid mind, he's like, well, I'm such a great guy now. I'm such a good husband, you know, and it was just eating away at him that he needed to share this with me. He didn't think I was going to react that much.
Oh.
It threw me truly into a midlife crisis. Like
Wow.
boom. And by the way, I love that this is, a lot of women are going to be listening to this.
Yes.
I end up seeing a therapist that I had used early on in our community when my daughter was having some bullying issues, and she was at my gym, and I'm like, Deb, you know, this is going on, and John, and I'm just so distraught. And she literally, and this is the enemy, looks at me and she goes, well, you know, you're not going to get any prettier than you are right now. You're not going to get any better. Here I am. Like,
Wow.
it literally took my breath away. And boy, after that, you know, I just was like, okay.
Holy moly. You have had some people speak some
Horrible
things to you. And look at you, still overcoming, girl.
So the other part of that is, you know, he worked really hard to get us back. And so the G, which is the God, he was on a flight and he ended up pouring his heart out to this guy and saying, my wife's going to leave me. I shared with her that I had, you know, relations with this woman. And, you know, it was 14 years ago. I thought she'd be, and, you know, my marriage is going to be ruined. And the man says, I've gone through something similar. I suggest you come up with a prayer. And you say this prayer all the time. You pray with her. And so he ended up coming up with a prayer. Do you want to hear it?
Yes.
God, we invite you into our marriage and family to love us, to heal us, to unite us, to strengthen us, so we can grow strong together and serve you together and raise children that glorify and honor you.
Wow.
And I have to tell you,
Awesome.
he said this prayer every day. If he was traveling, he'd get on the phone. I was not listening to this prayer.
I love it.
But he did not give up. And after a while, I started to like memorize the prayer just because he kept saying it, but I was not going to give him the satisfaction of saying it out loud. Yeah. Well, one night we're laying in bed, and every night when he was home, he would try to reach for my hand. I'd pull it away. And this one night he started saying the prayer and he reached for my hand, and I let him hold my hand. And I actually started saying the prayer with him.
Oh.
And that was the night I knew that I had forgiven him.
Oh.
And so, yeah. And we say that prayer every night to this day. So that was 10 years ago that he dropped that bomb, that he had done that 14 years prior, if that makes sense.
Yes.
But we have said that prayer every day since. If John's traveling, he'll call. If we can't reach each other, he'll text me or I'll text him and say, hey, I said our prayer. And
Oh,
so prayer is so important,
That
yes.
is
right?
such a beautiful
It
testimony.
is. I mean, I literally got chills
Yeah,
and
yeah.
emotional. So I'm so glad that so many of our listeners, you need to put that on rewind, write that down,
yes.
and just begin to declare that. I love it, Kathryn.
Yeah. So many people ask me for the prayer that I have it. You can get it free on my website if you go to kathrynforreal.com, or I think I even have it posted on Instagram a couple times, or you can email me. I'll be glad to give it to you. I always say to people, take my prayer, use it as your own, or take some of it and, make
Yeah.
it your own. So,
Right.
yes.
But you know what I love about that, Kathryn, and I want to point out is that throughout that time, from him starting to pray this prayer and you having nothing to do with it till the time that you actually held his hand, you weren't saying it, but you were hearing it, and how the Lord was working in you, just hearing it every day, the repetitiveness of that prayer and what it did
Yeah.
to you to heal you, but to heal that relationship to a point of forgiveness. Like, that's
You are
beautiful.
exactly right. Do you know there's a study, and that couples who pray together are 98% more likely to stay together.
Wow.
That's a
That
Cup-
is
that's a
huge.
huge
Yep, it really is.
number.
Couples who go to church together, there's no difference. Not to say church going isn't important, of course.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not
We
saying
hear
that.
you.
But isn't it interesting that it's the ongoing prayer?
Yes.
Right? It's the
So
ongoing
good.
prayer. And that leads me to the R in grit, which is resolve. And
Okay.
so John really resolved to work it
Yeah.
out. I think so many times in our lives we give up. We always want things to be easy, but you have to resolve to work things out, rather that's in
Yes.
your marriage or your relationship. And now when I say that, I always have to say, that doesn't mean stay in an abusive relationship. That does not mean, I'm talking about if you're having issues and somebody, you know what?
Yeah.
Work on it.
Yeah.
And then the I is for invest.
Mm.
And so we have to invest in our relationship,
Yes, we do.
in all of our relationships, our
Yes.
friendships. We have to nurture them. And so many times I think we take advantage of that. If it's our romantic relationship, it's like, oh, well, I live without. No, invest. And part of the
Absolutely.
prayer, I think, is investing, right?
Yes.
When you're
Yes.
praying, that's investing in the relationship,
Mhm.
in all your relationships. Yeah. And then the last part is T, do it together, or remember you're on the same team. And
Mm.
so in marriages, it means, a lot of times you can start, well, he's not doing this and she's not doing that. No. Remember, you're on the same team, because if
Yes.
you're on separate teams, you're keeping score and somebody's going to lose.
Yes.
Right,
Oh my
right,
gosh.
right.
So powerful.
Yes. I love this. And I'm hoping that our listeners who have just heard this testimony and story
Yeah.
are going to go out and get your book, because I know it's great. I did buy it. I haven't gotten all the way through it, but I did get started, and it is good.
Oh, good.
Well, I
Yeah,
just
it's a
love
pretty
this.
easy read.
Well, I mean, every time you're speaking, or like even right now, or you're changing families' lives. I mean, when they're hearing this story, you're giving them hope. I mean, that's absolutely incredible.
Tresa, I got to tell you, the neatest thing is, my book. And so you haven't finished it yet, but you'll see, like, we tell our story, which, anybody who reads the story and doesn't know John is like, I do not like your husband. And I'm like, keep reading. But, oh, we froze. Can you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
You're good.
good. Okay.
Yeah.
But, in the book, we talk about how we got to the other side, and it is a framework. That grit, GRIT, is a framework that couples and families can use. And then in the back of the book, we give all these different tips. But you said something before that, and I was going to address it, and I should have done it when I
No problem.
Well, Kathryn, grit is not the only acronym that you live by. You've got another one. Can you talk to us a little bit about your real acronym?
Yeah, which is great because really, as I was telling you about my story, my personal story, that's really where that real acronym came in. And so, but interestingly enough, the first thing that I have is the R, which is real, which is relationships, because, you know, great relationships are the foundation of all, right?
Yes.
Of
Absolutely.
your
Yeah.
life. Like
Yep.
when you
Yep.
have great relationships, you have a great life. And so, how do you have great relationships? This is another thing. And this is great, by the way, for anybody in your office, for people at home, your kids. I like to do this. I like to tell people, ask, like Tresa, you could ask Melissa, on a scale of 1 to 10, how well do I communicate? And
Mm.
what would make it a 10?
Ooh,
Mm,
so
that
good.
is.
You'll get so many good insights on how to be a better communicator, like how to have good relationships. And so that's the R. And
Okay.
I won't go in too deep on that. And then the E is encourage. Encourage means to put courage into,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
How do you know someone needs encouragement? They're breathing.
Everybody needs encouragement.
That's
Everybody
right.
needs encouragement.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
And I had told you a little bit about when I had decided to go to college. I didn't get a lot of encouragement from a lot of people around me, but there was one person in my life that would mention, are you going to go to college? And it was my great Aunt Lenny, who would come down
Oh,
and spend some holidays with us. And, she would always it was almost like a whisper in my ear, like,
yes.
you going to go to college? And I would think, why is she asking me that? But after a while,
Yep.
even though I would mention it to friends or my parent, and they'd be like, you're not going to college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she was encouraging me.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And
Oh,
there,
so good.
we need that in our lives, and we need to be that for other people.
Yes, yes. We don't know how just a little mention can
Ah,
really transform someone's life.
yes.
Huh.
Yes. It's that kind of thing. Listen, I look back at some of the teachers that I had, through high school and junior high, and some of them really spoke life into me
Yeah.
when I didn't believe in myself.
Yeah.
And it was just little things, but it can go the opposite, right? You've heard some teachers say some not nice things.
Well, you have, but that speaks to the power of our words, right?
Yeah.
Like the things that, the guy telling you that you're never going to amount to anything, you could have taken that and, become homeless and done nothing with yourself because you were told that you weren't ever going to amount to anything. And instead you let it motivate you to, oh yeah, just watch me, right?
Yep.
And then hearing
That's
the words,
exactly right.
the words in the prayer that your husband was praying over you guys, and these words from your aunt saying, you're going to go to college, planting those seeds, and our words are
Yes.
powerful.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and so the other part of encourage is to encourage yourself.
Mm.
Yeah.
So we need to learn to talk to ourselves instead of listen
Yes.
to ourselves.
Ooh,
Oh,
so
that's good.
good.
That
Well,
was good.
I'll tell you, about a year ago, I went through kind of a weird time where, I definitely think I was, postmenopausal, but I was just waking up negative, like thinking negatively. And it was almost like my antenna, the brain is an antenna. It was like my antenna it was a radio station tuned into www.negative.com, whatever. And so I realized I really was going down the wrong path. I was saying to John, like, oh, what's the use? I'm getting so old. I can't ever drop the weight. Just going on and on. So around that time, John and I had been asked to speak to it was a health company. And one of the things they wanted to do was do like this whole blood workup for us.
Mhm.
And so I was like, okay, sure. So, I'm sitting on Zoom with this nutritionist, and she's going through, my nutrients and all that. And it all made sense. Like, okay, this is why I'm, don't have energy, and this, and then all of a sudden she scrolls and she's like, this is interesting. And of course, what did I do? I went to the negative.
Mm.
She goes, no, you have the genes of an Olympic athlete.
Wow.
She goes, we don't see this very often. You have what's called the ultra genes. And she explains it. Okay, you guys, all of a sudden,
You
I
felt
sat up a little
amazing.
more. When I was done with her, I'm like, I think I'm going to go to the gym. Right? Like, but here's the thing. Nothing really changed. I just started to talk more positively to myself.
Oh,
So,
this is so good.
yeah. So make sure you are encouraging yourself and
Yes.
encouraging others, right?
Yes.
And then the A is for authenticity. You have to be
Mhm.
authentic.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a hard one for me because sometimes I was a little too authentic in certain groups. And you have to kind of know, you have to know your audience, right? But
Yeah.
in general, it just doesn't it feel better to just be yourself and not try to
Absolutely.
fake being somebody else, no matter what that looks like.
Yes.
And I think being in my second act, like I am now, I realize all that stuff didn't matter, trying to fit into so just, be yourself, what's more valuable, an original or a replica,
That's
Yeah.
right.
right?
Yeah.
So be authentic. And there's a whole story behind that. I'm not going to go into it. I went to jail. That's a whole other story.
Oh, now
I
that's
went to
just
jail
cruel.
3
That's
times.
just cruel.
That's a tease.
Yeah, we're gonna have you on again just so we can hear that part
I
of the
know, because
story.
I'm like, we're going over our time limit. Okay, so
I
then
know.
the L is legacy,
Okay.
right? What kind of legacy do you want to leave? So they did a study with a group of 95-year-olds, and they asked them, if you had to live your life over again, what would you do different? And they said they would have taken more risks. They would have
Mhm.
watched more sunrises and sunsets, and they would have left a legacy. And they weren't talking about, having their name up on a building. They were
Yeah.
talking about the impact that they could have
Yeah.
left on somebody, right?
Yes.
And so leaving a legacy, because when you know what kind of legacy you want to leave, it'll help you know how to live your life today.
You are not kidding. Wow.
Mhm.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. Well,
So
what?
that's the abbreviated real acronym, but I have some good stories that go along with, which will really help you understand the breakdown of it. But yeah, that's real, and that's my formula for real success for women. So
Wow. Well,
when I
I
talk
just
about, oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Nope, you go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, so that kind of gets me to my second act, because you introduced me early on, right? I'm a best-selling author of Relationship Grit. I'm a movie producer. I have a podcast called Kathryn for Real. I'm a real estate investor.
Yay.
So here's the neat thing. Besides being a mother and a wife, all those other things I didn't do until I was in my 50s.
Wow. So exciting.
Love that.
I
Right?
love it.
All those other things. And so you're never too old, and
Yes.
it's never too late to be the real you, right? Be the
Right.
real you.
Absolutely.
Kathryn.
Absolutely.
So inspiring.
Yes.
So powerful. I cannot wait for our listeners to hear this. And I know that they are going to be wanting
Yes.
to find you so that they can be where you are speaking next and all of that.
Yes, you have given us just enough of a tease that they are going to want.
Yeah.
They're going to want to look you up and read
Yeah.
about you and know who you are. So, Kathryn, tell our listeners how they can connect with you online and how they can find you.
Yeah. So you can go to my website, kathrynforreal.com. Through there, you can see my podcast. You can sign up for my newsletter. I send out a newsletter. Tresa's in it today. And so that went out to all of my people. And my Instagram is at Kathryn Gordon. And by the way, and I have my book, Relationship Grit. You can find that on all major, Amazon,
Okay.
Barnes and Noble. But one of the things I do have on my website are resources. And I have so many free resources I've got a gratitude journal for couples that you can download. I've got, 5 ways to fight less. So just a lot of free resources to help couples and people be
I love it.
better people, right? Have more authentic lives.
Yes. And I
Mhm.
just want to say
So
that's
good.
Kathryn with a K, Kathryn Gordon. So go find her. As you can see just from this talk today, so much
So
deep,
much, yes.
deep wisdom, encouragement, all the things. So thank you so much, Kathryn, for
Such
being
a
with us
beautiful
today.
testimony.
Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. Well, subscribe now to the Without Fear of Her Future podcast for new episode alerts. Are you ready to take charge of your financial future? Join our masterclass now. Everyday women just like you and I are turning real estate into life-changing profits. This masterclass is your golden ticket to rapid financial freedom. So dare to dream bigger and seize control of your future. Click the link in the episode description to register for the next masterclass and embark on a transformative journey today.
Thank you so much for joining us today. On behalf of the Women's Real Estate Investors Network and Tresa Todd, I'm Melissa Baker, encouraging you to be brave and dream big.